Hello and welcome. We're going to give it about 60 seconds as we have a bunch of people still joining. As soon as we see that rate slow down a little bit, we're going to go ahead and get started. But you are in the right session if you're trying to understand online purchase behavior. We have both HIRI and TraQline to present some great information to hopefully inform you with your strategy, your marketing plans, etc. So thank you for waiting briefly as the rest join. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, as mentioned previously, but for those who just joined, this is the webinar to understand online purchase behavior. Today, we have TraQline as our special guest. We have Eric Voyer and Stacie Hughes joining us. They will give a little bit more of an introduction of themselves and TraQline in just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with a few slides from a couple different studies that HIRI has done, and then I'm going to pass the slides over to TraQline. So I am Dave King. I'm Executive Director of HIRI. I've been in this role for a little under a year. Been involved with HIRI for several years now, first as a member like many of you, and then as a board member before formally joining within the ranks. We, as HIRI, we do quite a lot of research, and I should mention that we have a mixture of HIRI members and HIRI non-members on this webinar. So I'm going to speak very briefly about HIRI just to make sure everybody's aware of what we have to offer, and then I will jump into the presentation. But I wanted to really set the stage for what we're hoping to share with you. And HIRI's got a few things they're going to cover, and TraQline again will have some overlap, but also some other things. So for the content we're going to be showing you, we want to answer these 4 questions for you, and we want to do it with information that's backed by good quality data, of which we've got quite a lot of it, and TraQline has quite a lot of it. So the first is, what percentage of home improvement purchases are online? The second is, how does that differ by pro versus consumer? How does that differ by product category? And then what's happening over time, and what are we anticipating moving forward? So as those general reminders, HIRI started in 1981, so we've been around for 40 years. We do about 50 different studies a year. We do all of that for $12,500, and it gets you access to $1 million of research annually. Part of what you get is you get the data and the statistical testing that we do behind the scenes. But as a member, the data is yours. So it allows you to really cut and dice it however you see fit and specific to your use case. We have roughly a little under 100 members right now. And so it's a great group of members that really drive the direction of our research. And that is part of the value proposition you get with being a HIRI member, is you get to help decide what's most important to study. The other reminder I wanted to make for both non-members and members alike, first off, if you are a non-member, make sure you've signed up for a free account and for our newsletter. On the left side of the screen, we've got, these are different deliverables we have, and some of these are free, like our monthly pro and owner trackers are both free right now. So go ahead, sign up for that, and you can get some really great information that really helps understand the current pulse of the industry. And then on the right side, don't forget that if you are a member, on any one of these pages that you click on, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see where you have access to the actual data files. And that just allows you to answer some more granular questions that your organization might have. So jumping right in, we're going to cover 2 studies. One is a product purchase tracking study that we completed late last year. And what we do in this study is we look at what consumers are buying, and then we ask them a bunch of questions. We're going to focus on just the online elements, but in that study, you can come to a much greater understanding of other things going on, not only in-store, online, and who it's through, but we just looked at some of the other dynamics that might be helpful to you. Overall, across the study, for all home improvement purchases, we found that 21% were done online, while 74% were done in store. When we look at specific product categories, we see HVAC, appliances, and outdoor living being the top 3 categories of online purchases. Now, we have some theories about this. You would expect categories that are really big or commoditized, things like lumber, those are going to be lower. Paint, most people go and get their paint mixed at the store, and so we're not surprised to see that as the lowest category, and lumber being the other category that's just really low online, but that has shifted some over time. When we talk to homeowners about their purchasing dynamics, we ask this question, multi-select, so things aren't supposed to add up to 100%, but what we see is 1 in 4 typically are shopping online, and this matches the actual behavior data that we have. We also know that people do research, and so when you say, do you shop online, I think many consumers will consider the researching process as part of the shopping experience. What we see is 8 out of 10 are doing a good amount of research, and we know that the vast majority of that's going to be happening online. And so it's why we see some of the distinct differences that we do see here. But overall, we have seen this number grow. It begs a very important question as to whether or not we expect to see that continue, and we're going to touch on that on the next slide after this. This slide here, what we did is we looked across all of these transactions and we said, where was this purchased? And based on dollar allocation, but also based on the purchase occasion. So you might have bought a dozen different things in one transaction. Was that in store? Was that online? And then as an allocation of dollars. And what we see is very consistent results, where roughly 15–16% was done online from these 2 perspectives. Again, there's lots of different perspectives. We're going to have TraQline go through some of their data, and they're going to have their own way in which they look at transactional information. And collectively, I think it shows the same story. But when you see little differences in numbers, it's usually like, how are we speaking about it? Are we speaking in terms of spend, purchase occasions, what period of time, etc.? One thing that was really interesting is if you look at this far right bar, you'll see that the preferred way to purchase products, 90% in store. And I think this is really interesting because it's a larger percent than what's actually happening. And so this speaks really to the dynamics that we're seeing as we move forward, which is that there's somewhat of a reversion back to in-store. There's a couple different theories out there for why this might be the case. We've got some data that shows why people are doing in-store versus online, but overall, a lot of us felt like we had to go online. Whether it was because of availability, whether it was because there was more variety, whether it was because of health concerns, that it was just better to buy it online given a individual's health concerns. But overall, we are seeing a reversion back to more in store. The other thing I wanted to call out, and I should have called this out before, is that these percentages here are contractors. So if we go back 2 slides and we see 21%, this is consumers. So that question of how is it different between consumers and pros? Pros purchase less online. I think there's a fairly intuitive reason behind this. A consumer, they've got a project, they're thinking it through, they're researching it, they find what they want, they go and buy it. A pro, they've got a job. That job, they move on to that job, they're getting going, they need materials, they need those materials. Now they're going to go to the store, they're going to get everything they need, and then they're going to go and they're going to install the job. And their goal is to get a job done to the satisfaction of the customer as quickly as possible. And so there's probably going to be an increased priority of availability, of I can get it right now, whereas a homeowner might be willing to wait some time. And so that's one of a couple different theories we have for why pro purchasing is, online purchasing is lower than consumers. This slide has a wealth of information that I hope all of you find to be helpful. But if we look at the leftmost chart, this is looking at relative to a year ago. Do you prefer to buy relatively more in-store, online, or no change at all? And no change. Their purchase behaviors are the same. However, there is 43% that say they are moving more towards in-store, and only 10% are saying they're moving more online. So, you know, back of the napkin math here, that's a 4-to-1 ratio. And so that is a meaningful shift for going back into the store. And again, this is with pros. Now, as far as the experience, and this is that center chart here, most say the experience is about the same as a year ago. But when we look at that far right side and we say, hey, of those that say it's a better experience online, why? 21% say because there's more choice online. Again, this is among pros. 15% says easier, 15% say faster shipping is driving the better experience. When we look at the other side and say, why is this worse? Longer wait times, hard to find products, and more expensive. So we know as we talk to the big box retailers and other retailers out there, they're trying to solve for these challenges, and they're doing some really great things to make it a better experience for the pro. And depending on how successful they are, maybe we'll see a better balance between these things, where we might see a shift back towards more online. But what we do know is online is here to stay. These categories on the right, if we look at just a few more, just to give you some broader context, you'll see the same options shown in those top three, but then you'll see kind of rounding out the other options that are available. What I think is really interesting is that only 7% said cheaper or lower prices is a reason why it's better. I just find that really interesting. I think right now, where we are with the recessionary concerns and the inflationary pressures, prices is in some of our other research we're doing, we're seeing prices becoming more of an issue. And so I'm curious how this will change over time. I do see price playing a bigger role in purchasing behaviors in the remainder of 2023 and into 2024. With that, I'm going to turn it over to TraQline, to Eric and to Stacie. So just one moment as I get this loaded.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, we'll introduce ourselves while you do that, Dave. And that's some cool stuff. And we're going to kind of build on some of those. We're going to have some different data points on those. We'll talk a little bit more about what TraQline is and how we collect our information here in just a second. But I'm Eric Voyer, the one on the left, not the one on the right of your picture. And I do need some powder apparently here. My role here at TraQline is helping our customers understand how to use it, providing the benefits of the product, all kinds of different things. So I'm here today to share with you these online insights. And Stacie, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Stacie Hughes. I've been with TraQline for about 14 years, and I have several different hats that I wear. I manage several clients. I work on the sales and marketing team as well as branding. So I do a variety of different things, and thank you for having us today, Dave.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dive in here with the first slide. And really what we want to do is set the stage, right? I mean, I have to give you a fair warning. We're going to use the word pandemic maybe once or twice, but we are using it less than we were a year or two ago. But our goal here was to say, well, what's changed? How are things different? Because we know, I mean, obviously the pandemic, there I did it, fundamentally impacted the way that we behave, not just in terms of with our loved ones in our homes, but also, you know, the way we shop for products, the way we buy products, the way we think about the world. And, you know, there's a lot of finger quotes when people talk about normal in the new world. And, you know, we're not going to say it a lot here, but I'm going to go ahead and keep those finger quotes out there because normal is different now. And so what we want to do is highlight some of those changes that are happening over time. And Stacie's going to talk a little bit about how we do that, the kind of information that we have, what we're going to do to show you that information.
Thanks, Eric. First, as Eric mentioned, we'll cover kind of how we collect our data and some of the data points that we'll share today. And just to reiterate what Dave had mentioned, you know, each partner defines shopping behavior as well as buying behavior a little bit differently when we're looking at online, and I'll get into that as well. But changes in online shopping, TraQline has a tendency to really look at shopping as what those activities are that you do online in terms of research, kind of like what Dave had mentioned, looking up product prices, promotions, things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that versus the changes in actually purchasing online or buying online. So that's where they actually make that purchase online versus in store. And then we are going to also share just kind of a profile of the consumers and the differences between some of those demographics, online purchasers as well as in-store purchasers.
Cool.
Next up, for those of you that are not familiar with TraQline, though I beg to believe that there are people on here today that do not know TraQline, but for those of you that are new, it is really the largest, most consistent consumer behavior survey in North America. We focus on consumer durables, and we track information on who, what, where, and why those consumers are purchasing, whether it's online or in store. Now, when we talk about consumer durables, the categories we track are about 270 plus categories. In the last 4 quarters of the last year, which is what we'll talk about today, is rolling 4 quarters, but we had about 600 completes, and in terms of the vast majority of data that we have access to. Now, what does that mean in terms of products? So purchased, it was a little bit over 1 million home improvement products purchased. And then when we call that down a little bit and talk about how we define home improvement, that was about 1.6 million total products purchased in the last 4 quarters. And you know, everybody operationalizes home improvement a little bit differently. And you can see here on the screen that we're focused on power tools and accessories, hand tools, kitchen and bath, building, plumbing, electric, safety, other home improvement products like paint, shelving, storage, lawn and garden, major appliances, as well as small. Now, we don't have tires, mattresses, furniture, or exercise equipment in there, or consumer electronics. Though we track those categories, they're not made up in what we're calling our home improvement composite.
Yeah, and we'll actually superimpose sometimes the total, excuse me for a second, excuse me, the total versus home improvement. So you can see, my lighting is terrible. So you can actually see, you know, what some of those differences are and how they're driven. This slide is what I call my duh slide. Like we know that because you were locked in your home, in your basement or in your attic willfully, that you were shopping online more. We know that you were buying online more. Like you guys all know this information. I'm not here to tell you that because you already know this. You know there's an increase in prices because you're feeling it at the gas pump. You're feeling it when you buy bread or milk or home improvement products. I mean, I remember buying lumber that was $9 a stick for a 2x4. Like $9. Now it's come back down a little bit, but or a lot, but still, I mean, we all know that these things are here. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you specifically, like, what is the data that supports that? How much has it changed? Has it come back? Are things different? So we'll dive into that here in just a second. And we're going to start with changes in online shopping. And just at a very broad level, I want to start with consumer durables by talking about what's happened in the past 5 years. And I'll show you a more detailed picture of this. But just as a whole, we've seen an 840 basis point change across all products. And a basis point basically means it went up 8.4 percentage points. So if it was 50, it's now 58.4. So that's across all products. If we look at home improvement alone, though, we're actually seeing a higher basis point increase. So there's some definite changes between home improvement and all products.
Eric, why would you say that home improvement is higher?
Yeah, so home improvement had some space to give, if you will. So there's a kind of a buffer there. If you think about the categories that we didn't mention in home improvement, you've got things like computers, cell phones, believe it or not, exercise equipment like treadmills and ellipticals. Those have always done really well online because people don't have the truck to pick them up from the store and bring them to the home. So those categories aren't included in here. So if we think about specifically like, and we'll dive into some of the categories that have gone up higher, but even things like appliances have really gained some popularity online. So there was just more space to give in terms of home improvement. Good question. So digging around into the details here, again, this is online shopping. We mentioned it earlier. HIRI, the HIRI data showed that about 1 in 4 people shop online. Now, the question is always, how do you define shop online? Stacie mentioned it earlier. For us, it's basically any activity. What did you do when you were online? This could be read reviews. It could be looking for a place where you can buy the product. So this is how we define it. Now, Dave's numbers also said that about 57% did those activities, and our numbers actually correlate pretty highly. Now, the beauty of what we do is that with 600,000 people, we can now drill down very deeply into each of these individual categories, and then we also have it trended for a long period of time. I'm showing you 5 years here. We actually have 20 years worth of history. We've done 13 million surveys, so we've got a lot of history. Enough about that. Here's the takeaway from this slide. Basically, in 2019 to 2020, the trend prior to that was very similar. It was this gradual increase, right? And then, of course, we see 2020 to 2021, and this is 4-quarter time period, that big jump, okay, because people are sequestered, people are getting, they're having to find things online, they can't go out to the store. But the big takeaway here is what happened after? What did people do after they were able to get out of the house, right? And Dave mentioned this. There was some fatigue, obviously, with being stuck inside of the house. What did you say? They had to go online. I actually wrote your quote down, Dave. They had to go online back then, and now they didn't necessarily have to do that. But it didn't drop that much. From a shopping standpoint, a behavior pattern was established, right? And people continued to shop online. That's about maybe 2 percentage points, if even that. So for me, the big question is, all right, well, that was last year at this time. What's going on right now? And this is ending in January, February, March. In March of 2023, where are we at? And we're just up by just a skosh, hardly anything. So has that behavior changed? Yes, it's kind of dropped back down and then we've leveled off. Now, Stacie's going to ask me another question, so I'll go ahead and jump on it. Like, what's going to happen in the future? Well, nobody knows, right? What do I think is going to happen in the future? I think that what we're seeing is the finger quotes, right? The new normal. I do think we're not going to see that drop back down. I think people have found the benefits to online. You see a lot of infrastructure that's been created by retailers and manufacturers, store within a store, just a lot of website improvements, a lot of last mile stuff that you're seeing where these people are actually getting product to the home faster or in better ways or not all banged up. Right, Stacie, you had a kitchen remodel where you had some of that you had to deal with?
Yeah. Well, and I also just in terms of, talking about how my shopping behavior has changed, my line didn't go down. It's continued to go up. I find it to be so helpful in saving time for me and my family that probably much to my husband's disappointment, I continue to purchase online and go to the store to pick it up. So for me, it's definitely a convenience factor.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So when we think about specifics of what they're doing online on our next slide, we actually have some percentages here that dive a little deeper in here. And Dave, if you could just hit the button for me, that'd be awesome. So, when we look in here, I'm not showing the trend here, but what I am showing is the absolute. There's really not much change. People are always interested in pricing. Like, when we ask about why did you purchase a product, it's usually, well, price is usually the #1 reason. There are some categories where that's a little bit different, but generally prices is one of the top things that people are doing when they're online. And you can actually see compared prices is #1. Then you've got down there it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, compared product features and benefits. So just a lot of education gathering about the product, wanting to know a little bit more about like where can they get the stuff. They're looking for store physical locations. Do I need to go down the street, or do I have to go, to another city? And then searching for a shopping website. So that's more along the lines of, for me, it's you type in the product and then Google, for instance, tells you the different places where you can purchase it. So these are some of the behaviors. They're not changing much. Pricing is still at the top of the list. But this is interesting. If we think about like people's behavior as they shop, as they move around from store to store. On our next slide, we can see that 3 out of every 4 purchases occur at the first physical store shopped. So when we talk about draw and close, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'll just give you the TLDR version. Close rate is you got somebody to shop you and they bought there, okay? So what I'm seeing here is when people don't shop online, that 3 out of 4 times, almost 3 out of 4, it's like 73.5% or something like that. 3 out of 4 times, they don't go anywhere else. So if you can physically get somebody into that store to shop, 3 out of 4 times they're going to close there. Now, obviously this changes based on the categories, right? So, the more expensive the product, most of the time, the more cross shopping or shopping around that we see. But when you look at shopping online, I mean, this is another duh slide, isn't it? Right? I'm shopping online, so why not just type in Lowe's.com or Tractor Supply or Costco or whatever the case might be. So when they're shopping online, they're more likely to shop multiple stores. But in general, 3 out of 4 purchases at a physical store, they're purchasing there. As we move on to the next slide, we talked a little bit about draw rate, okay? And as we dive into this particular slide, shopping online for durable goods. So this is I put durable goods on here, but at the bottom, you can see that it's actually home improvement buyers. We're seeing that about 36% of the time when people shop online, they're shopping at Amazon.com. So that's quite a bit. And as you know, they have a lot of products out there. When we look at Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart, you see 17, 15, and 13% respectively. So Walmart at the lower end of that. Now, a lot of this is going to be driven by product mix, okay? So I don't know, Stacie, do you want to talk to this slide a little bit about our draw and close rates?
Sure. So as Eric mentioned, we track draw, which is the ability to see where everybody has shopped. So for instance, if I purchased this refrigerator behind me, I shopped at Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy. So that's the draw rate among anybody who was shopping for a refrigerator. In terms of close, I bought my refrigerator from Lowe's. That is the close rate. And then obviously the walk rate is that percentage complete opposite, right? So if they didn't close, then that was the walk rate and they went somewhere else. On this slide, we're focused on Amazon having a very high close rate, which Eric had talked a little bit about as well. But what we looked at is Walmart and Home Depot have a high close rate of about 59%. So we have website shopped across the top, and then along the side, we have where they actually purchase. And so when people are shopping Amazon, 89% of the time they're actually buying there as well. So that's their close rate. We look at Walmart, it's 59%. And we see that, of those people shopping Walmart's website, 3% of them actually purchase from HomeDepot.com. Home Depot has 59% close rate. And then we see Lowe's is really lower than the other 3 big players in the home improvement category with 48% close rate. So among those people shopping, 15%, 48% of them actually make a purchase at Lowe's.
Yeah, and this is website only, right? So they shopped at Lowe's.com, and 48% of the time they ended up closing at Lowe's.com. And I talked a little bit about infrastructure and website experience and things like that. And frankly, Amazon's had a lot more time to really refine their user experience, and that is their primary focus, obviously. And you can see it pays off. They're doing a phenomenal job of keeping people there once they shop the site. And if you remember, this is kind of a funnel here. So if you go back up one slide, this number right here that says 36% of the time customers shop Amazon.com, and then we go down, this, go down one more slide. So this Amazon right here, that's the 36% of the shoppers. So go back, go to the next slide. Okay, so this Amazon.com is 36% of the population of the buyers. Okay, and then of those people, 89% ended up shopping or buying there. So it's a really powerful way of looking at how well a store's website is doing at converting a shopper to a buyer. And again, we can see that Amazon does better, Walmart the next best, Home Depot and Lowe's. Now, again, product mix. I'm going to reinforce the fact that product mix has something to do with this, because as you think about, buying a toaster, that's a whole lot different from buying a refrigerator, for instance. So speaking of buying, let's dive into some of the actual buying behaviors as opposed to just the shopping behaviors. And I mean, again, another duh, right? Online purchase rates peaked in 2021, but you probably see a pattern here. If I take that other slide to shopping and I lay it on top of this, the trend is very, very similar, okay? And a little smooth incline followed by a baby bump, right? And then followed by a little slight decline, if not flat, and then it's still relatively flat. But what I found remarkable about this is it hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. So the rates are currently leveled out, but we're seeing the retailers continue to change. And what I mean by that is if we pop over to online plus brick, so this is the total market. This is not just online. We'll dig into online in just a second. We can see that the big four retailers in home improvement, okay, they've got 65% of the unit share. So whatever that is, 6.5 out of every 10, somebody can do better math than I can, 3 out of 5, whatever it is, are going to one of those four stores when it comes to all the products that are sold and buying there. And then we actually have the percentage of unit share listed on this page. So unit share 19% for Depot, 16% for Walmart, 16% for Lowe's, and 13% for Amazon. And that change you can see over time. For Home Depot, it's not much. For Walmart, it's not much. For Lowe's, it's not anything, but Amazon's really gained a ton of share. And they're getting into newer categories. So you're seeing more appliances on there. You're seeing other things that would typically take a long time to get to you. They're showing up on Amazon.com. Now, on the other half of the page, we've got dollar share. And the way we calculate unit share, Stacie showed you in the very beginning, 1.1 million transactions of home improvement products. But we also ask, how much did you pay for that product? So we can take all those dollars of what people spent, we can add them up, and then we can say, okay, of all those dollars, what percentage of those dollars were sold at Home Depot? What percentage of those dollars were sold at Walmart, Lowe's, and Amazon? And maybe this is a surprise to some of you guys. It shouldn't be, because I've said it about 6 times, it's mix, right? So a lot of this is driven by the mix. If you're buying a toaster that's $40 or a coffee maker that's $100, that's a whole lot different from a pallet of plywood, or it's a whole lot different from a bunch of windows or paint or things like that. Now, obviously, Walmart sells paint. So it's about where consumers go when where they consider purchasing and then where they actually purchase. And again, you can see on the right that 5-year change is a little less significant for dollars versus units. Stacie, any thoughts on there? Are we good?
I'm good. Thank you.
So I've talked a little bit about product mix, and product mix is really a lot of tickets, right? It's driven a lot by the ticket. So if you think about the Amazons and the Walmarts on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that their average price is much lower. And when I say home improvement products, remember, we're talking about all those things that we saw back in slide 2 or 3. So it's the toasters and the coffee makers, but then it's also the refrigerators and the washers and the windows and the lawnmowers and the power drills and the drill bits and accessories. So when we look at the dollar share, obviously you see much higher dollar share for Lowe's and Home Depot because of those products that they're selling, and a lower dollar share for Amazon and Walmart. Now, what do you do with this information? Like, why is that important? Well, it's important to know the products that they excel in. Which industries do they do better? And if we pop over to the next slide, once again, this is total market, but we can see by large category, power tools and accessories, hand tools, kitchen and bath, building, plumbing, electric safety, which I call BPES going forward. The other home improvement, which Stacie mentioned, is paint and stains and cleaning supplies and shelving and storage. Okay, it's not really a total home improvement. And then the lawn and garden, which is going to include mowers and rakes and shovels and line trimmers. We know what majors are. In this case, it actually includes microwaves, and then small appliances. We know what those are. This probably isn't a surprise to most of you guys. You know, if you need to buy a coffee maker, Walmart's typically where you think about going instead of a Lowe's, for instance. But you can see that in some categories, Amazon actually has a pretty decent market share. And these are all just indexed to like 33%. So the fullest bar is 33%. The one that's half of that is going to be 16.5%. So that's kind of how we've done this. I don't have numbers on it because it's way too many numbers. Again, driven by product mix. A few other things that aren't on this list that I think are pretty interesting. If you could just go back one more, if you don't mind, please. The things that I haven't really, the retailers that I haven't talked about, I've really drilled into Home Depot, Walmart, Lowe's, and Amazon. And that's kind of unfair because I'm looking at home improvement in a big context. But there's people that are kind of up and coming. Costco actually is becoming a player in appliances, for instance. Both large and small. So I've got some notes here. They have a 2% share of small appliances and a 3% share of large appliances, which isn't bad when you think about the fact that, you know, you have to be a member and they're geographically concentrated. Best Buy, they have a smaller share than Costco in small appliances, but when you look at their large appliances, they have nearly an 11% share. So a pretty good chunk of share coming from Best Buy as it relates to large appliances. Also got people like Ace Hardware. Ace Hardware looks like they've got a moderate performance across most of these categories except for appliances. So,
Eric, can you define what you mean by moderate for the Ace Hardware?
yeah, it's about 3 to 5% across the board as far as Ace Hardware goes. And that's the non-appliance categories, except for like kitchen and bath improvements. So these other categories, power tools, hand tools, BPES, they're about 3 to 5%. Target also, you know, 10% of small appliances in the US. Harbor Freight, I didn't mention Harbor Freight, but when you look at power tools and accessories, hand tools and accessories, they're like 6 or 7%. That hasn't changed much in the past 5 years, but it's still, you know, they've made a lot of infrastructure changes there as well. I know I focused a lot on that slide, so I'm ready to move on to some of the online changes. Okay, and you know, online, we talked about, you know, the mix of products that are sold online. You know, Amazon from a unit share perspective, just killing it, nearly half of the market share across the home improvement categories that we track. But on the dollar share side, it's really, it's still 1 and 4. It's pretty huge, but a lot of share here. But look at the change in the big 4 there. So in the past 5 years, a gain of 10 percentage points across units, and a gain of 6 percentage points across the dollars. So a lot of concentration in those upper level larger retailers, which doesn't bode well for the smaller guys because that's who they're taking it from, is anybody that's not on this list.
Eric, I wanted to add, I know we had talked about Wayfair a little bit, and I think that
Yes.
that was a player coming in during the pandemic. I too made several purchases from Wayfair, but as a percentage of the total, we see that it's fairly limited or negligible, and really this is because their product mix is not skewed toward home improvement as much as some of these other big players are.
They're starting to sell appliances though, right?
I did see that, yes.
Yep,
Thank
yep,
you.
okay.
Yes, when I was doing my kitchen remodel, I noticed that they had ranges and some other items on there. I was surprised to see. But in terms of focused on furniture, which we don't particularly use in our definition of home improvement, they're at about 11%. And as you mentioned, getting into appliances. So I think we'll probably, you know, see some interesting changes in the data. And now that 11% is for the last year. where they actually had peaked at 14% for furniture during the pandemic. So you can kind of see that.
Awesome, thank you. I know we had talked about sharing some of that Wayfair data. Oh, my favorite. Anytime I get to use a bubble chart, I'm all about bubble charts. I just don't get to use them very often. So let's talk about what this is. So basically, every category has seen increases in online purchase rates. Okay, this is across units. So the size of the bubble indicates the size of the growth. So building, plumbing, electrical, and safety products, which includes, that's like smoke detectors, and actually I'll show you what's in there in just a second, but it's including smoke detectors and home security camera, doorknobs and locks, so a few things like that. They're actually, over the past 5 years, shown the biggest increase at 15 percentage points. Now on the left-hand side, the 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, that is actually where they sit in terms of their percentage of online sales. So building, plumbing, and electric is currently somewhere around 38%. You can see furniture and accessories is over 40, between 40 and 50%. So you get the idea. So building, plumbing, and electric and safety has really gained a whole lot over the past 5 years. Sports equipment, I mentioned that to you earlier, started really high and it's actually continued to go high, but it's still number 4 on the list. Furniture and accessories, Stacie, you just mentioned Wayfair. You know, a lot of that stuff as people were stuck in their homes, they're doing remodels, they're doing their home desks, all of those different things. Now, I don't consider that a home improvement category, so it's in blue. Sports equipment, I don't consider a home improvement category. Some people might. It's also in blue. So only the ones in green are the home improvement categories, and the ones in blue are other categories that we track, which we find that people like to have that benchmark in place. So building, plumbing, and electric and safety is really leading the way. And if we flipped over to the next slide, I think it's important to identify just what is driving that. Because in some categories, you know, certain products drive the entire group of products, right? For instance, in lawn and garden, if we look at dollar shares, you've got a line trimmer that might cost $200. You've got a walk behind mower that might cost $500. You've got a hedge trimmer that might cost $300. And then you have a ZTR that's $4,000. So in that category, ZTRs drive dollar share more than anything else. So for us, what we're seeing driving these online purchases, BPES, I'm still not really used to saying that, home security cameras, right? I mean, this is something that people get, it's a high-tech product, and it just makes sense to me, at least, to purchase online. Doorknobs and locks also could be considered a high-tech product. We're seeing a lot more of the Bluetooth enabled, or we haven't really seen Matter come out that I'm aware of in those categories. But, you know, we're seeing these tech products, smoke or CO detector. And then you get into other things like door and window cabinet hardware and electrical parts. On the small appliance side, we got vacuums in there a couple of times, coffee makers, portable fans. And then for majors, one of the top product driving the online purchases is microwaves. So most of these are things that it's easy to get to your home. Of course, refrigerators and dryers aren't necessarily. Last couple of slides before we run out of time, which we probably already did. Just online pricing. Let's talk real quick about tickets. So on average, they're going to vary, of course, but people are typically spending about $19 more in store versus online. And this is across total home improvement. That's about an 8% difference in the retail store. Reasons for that, obviously the endless aisle, like the more products that you have to pick from, you know, obviously you can get more on the high end, but you can also get more on the low end. So you may have consumers more likely online to gravitate more towards those products that have a lower price, but the same value proposition in terms of features. So we see that, but then there's 3 products that have the greatest difference. And when I say difference, I mean highest in retail versus online. And that's this home improvement, which again, I finally have a bullet point in here: storage, air filters, paint, shelving, cleaning supplies, building, plumbing, electric, and safety, BPES, which we saw earlier, and then kitchen and bath improvement, which is going to be faucets, shower heads, and things like that. So this is the ticket pricing. And then, of course, when you look at the top home improvement products, this is a smattering of those products by the deltas. I don't want to get into it too much because, again, I'm running out of time. I really didn't want to keep you guys too much, but I hope that you're enjoying it. You know, we see products like gutters, which have a huge online increase versus in store. Windows, same thing, more dollars that are spent. This is average price paid, by the way, online versus in store. And we see things like siding and roofing and so on and so forth. And then if we flip over to the last couple of slides, we get into the demographics, for instance.
For the sake
Demographics.
Let's jump into the Q&A. We want to make sure we get there and then get people out just a few minutes early, if that works for you, Eric.
Perfect. But can I just address real quick? There's 4 slides on the demographics that are in there. It's okay. We don't have to show them. We've got generation, education, some of the key demographics, and then regional. So feel free to dive in there, get those slides, and then you can see the actual numbers there. There's not too much difference. All right, what do we got?
All right, we had a couple of questions, and I think this one is for Dave. Of those that purchase online, are you able to determine what % of those first shopped the store and then executed the transaction online versus a true online purchase? Never stepped in a store, although might have picked it up at the store.
Showrooming.
You know, I think we've got some really good information on that. To address that specifically, it's kind of study by study, where some of the studies we do, we will have that level of granularity. I showcased 2, one pro study, one consumer study, and I'm honestly, I'm just not recalling if we captured them both or just one of them now. So happy to reach out afterwards to provide some clarity on that one.
Okay. And then Eric, are there gender differences in how online shopping has changed?
Not really. So again, if you go into the actual difference between online versus in store, I don't know if we captured gender in there, married, homeowner, household age. I don't have that stat in front of me. Like Dave, you know, we've got so many data points. Unfortunately, sometimes it's difficult to highlight. But Stacie, we did do some digging into the demographics. Most of those things, there's not a whole lot of difference. Obviously, as the generations shift, right, as our population ages out, I mean, we're seeing changes in how people purchase from a generational perspective. But, you know, in terms of changes in gender, it's not that much different.
Okay, those are the major questions. The only other question, which I answered, will the PowerPoint be mailed out? Yes, I will be mailing out to all registered people for the webinar a link where the recording will be available, as well as where you can actually download the slide deck.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And everybody knows about the HIRI conference in September, right? Dave, were you going to do a pitch for that? Or do you want me to?
Hey, hopefully you guys have seen it through LinkedIn and our email campaigns, but we've got a really great summit planned this year in September in Chicago. I hope all of you are able to attend. The feedback we got this last year was that it was really insightful as organizations think strategically about the future. We've got some great partners and sponsors at that event. TraQline is one. They've been a sponsor for many years. We're very grateful for their sponsorship. But come on out. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to really help position your understanding of what 2024 and beyond look like. So thanks, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Dave.
everyone.
Thanks, Pam. Bye-bye.